In Canada, they're actually having open debate on the House floor regarding these camps. So we have this clip here of Randy Hillier. He's a politician from Ontario. So let's take a look at this one.
All right.
The next question, the member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. In my supplemental question yesterday, I asked this government if the people of Ontario should prepare for internment camps. In September, the federal government posted a call for expressions of interest for contractors to supply, provide and manage quarantine isolation camps throughout every province and every territory in Canada. These quarantine isolation camps, however, are not limited to people with COVID, but provide a wide latitude for many people to be detained. Surely this government is aware of the intentions to build these isolation camps from coast to coast. And my question to the Premier is, how many of these camps will be built, and how many people does this government expect to detain?
Question. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is very true that when people leave the country and when they come back in, that the province is suggesting, and the federal government, in cooperation with the federal government, we are suggesting that people isolate themselves. That has been a practice that has been very successful, not only here in the province of Ontario, but across Canada. And we will, of course, be redoubling our efforts to make sure that the people of the province of Ontario remain safe, Mr. Speaker. So if the member is referring to the fact that that one of the public health policies is that when you return from a jurisdiction outside of the province of Ontario or from another country that you isolate yourself for 2 weeks, I would suggest that has been a good policy that has been working. In fact, this House has been doing the same thing since we came back. We are working in cohorts to make sure that the Legislative Assembly can continue to operate. That's why we have 2 separate cohorts. Mr. Speaker.
Response.
With the cooperation of the official opposition, that is why all members of the Independents have been excluded from that cohort, because we want them to be able to participate in debate. So we will continue to do everything in our power to make sure that this House continues, but that the people of the province of Ontario and Canada are kept safe.
Supplementary question.
Again, back to the Premier. Here's the RFP, and in the RFP it uses clear language to express that these camps can be used for a broad spectrum of people, not limited to travellers. Indeed, it doesn't even mention international travellers. It's just a broad latitude of people. And I'll send over the copy of the RFP after. So your government must be in negotiations and aware of these plans to potentially detain and isolate citizens and residents of our country in our province. So, Speaker, to the Premier, where will these camps be built? How many people will be detained? And for what reasons?
Question.
For what reasons can people be kept in these isolation camps? And I'd like to have the Premier assure the people of Ontario.
Member, take a seat.
What happened there? Did he get a response?
Looks like he got his, it looks like he had his microphone cut, his audio cut on his microphone.
So this isn't a question that's allowed here, even though he seems to be reading from government documents, a discussion of who are we putting in these internment camps. Very, very disturbing, right? And these are, and how many people are aware this is happening in their governments? How many governments are having these conversations and we don't even know what's going on?
Right. And we have a part of that contract we can take a look at from Canada, where it does not say international travelers. So this is from Public Health Canada, and some of the quotes in there, it says, in anticipation of possible continued need for quarantine sites over the next 1 to 2 years, given the COVID-19 pandemic, PHAC is considering having a third-party service provider provide and manage the existing sites and all the related services on its behalf. Goes on to say security services 24/7 at the sites by licensed guards, which will be contracted separately. Now, in this contract, it admits there's 11 sites currently, and they're looking at possibly expanding that to nine more. So this is a contract for a third-party service to manage those. And it, like Hillier said in there, it doesn't say international travelers. It actually leaves it open for a wide range of people, depending on the need for during this COVID-19 pandemic.
It's really scary, man, when you start thinking of all the tracking discussions and the cell phones and big tech joining with pharma and pushing this in governments. And now, you know, guards around internment camps in Canada, of all places. I went to film school in Canada. That is not a really very rebellious crowd. I'm pretty sure they would go along with, like, hey, I'll just stay in my house. I'm cool, man. You don't need to stick me in a prison. Really scary, scary stuff. I mean, and it makes you think, is this, you know, the ghost of Christmas future? Is this where we're all going? I mean, it sounds like the WHO must be dictating this to the different nations around the world. And I just keep imagining, while this is going on, in China, the biggest dance parties breaking world records are taking place. Based on the things I said, you know, it's unbelievable. And I imagine people are saying, well, what about America? We're not that crazy, right?
Yeah, well, it's refreshing to see people stand up like they did there in Canada. And I remember from May, you took concern to what someone said in Ventura County. This was Robert Levin, Ventura County's public health director, and we have a clip of that. So let's take a look at what he said.
We are beginning a program today, which will certainly grow into something larger and larger, and that is a community contact tracing program. We've done contact tracing all along. When we find someone who has a COVID infection, those people are immediately isolated. But we also work with them to figure out who their contacts were. As we do more testing, we will find more and more people who have COVID-19. And again, we'll isolate every one of them, and we will find every one of their contacts, and we will make sure that they stay quarantined, and we'll check in with them every day. We're going to do a more complete job, and we're going to do a more meticulous job of making it less and less possible for others in the county to run into someone with COVID-19 infection. It's not just our county. There are going to be thousands of people hired who will be these contact investigators throughout the state. And this is occurring in many, many other states as well, perhaps all of the states in our country. Some of the people we find are going to have trouble being isolated. For instance, if they live in a home where there's only one bathroom and there are 3 or 4 other people living there, and those people don't have COVID infection, we're not going to be able to keep the person in that home. Every person who we're isolating, for instance, needs to have their own bathroom. And so we'll be moving people like this into other kinds of housing that we have available.
I remember that. In fact, I got into a lot of trouble, right? I put a tweet out with that video that said, what would you do if your 6-year-old son or daughter tested positive for COVID-19 and was taken from your home to a quarantine center by Ventura health authorities? This shocking video demands that you plan ahead. Hashtag be brave. Hashtag history repeating. That was all the way back in May 6th. Of course, that eventually got my Twitter feed shut down. They called it false information. And what's really interesting is that, you know, we were talking about, oh, we should revisit that tweet you had. And suddenly on my tweet, I had complained, and I even erased it. So they were going to make me erase certain tweets if I wanted to get back up and running. I was down for nearly a month, and this was what had happened. And so I erased it because I wanted to be able to get out and talk to people. But now it's back up. And it's back up. And I was thinking, why is it back up? And then this is something I want to sort of celebrate in the moment. We got an email from one of the viewers of the Highwire to our website, and it's to the whistleblower at ICanDecide.org. One of our viewers said, have you seen this discussion about camps essentially on the CDC's website? Now, this is what this is for. This is what's so brilliant about our audience, is so many of you are really, really smart out there. This only came to our attention 2 days ago. There was a discussion about a form of camps on the CDC website. I sent that over to you, Jeffrey, because we've been running around over here. What did you find?
Yeah, it was called Operational Considerations for Implementing the Shielding Approach. That's an interesting word there, to prevent COVID-19 infections in humanitarian settings. Now, this is guidance to, it's called to, quote, highlight potential implementation challenges and to guide thinking. And it says here, the shielding approach aims to reduce the number of severe COVID-19 cases by limiting contact between individuals at higher risk of developing severe disease and the general population, low risk. High risk individuals would be temporarily relocated to safe or green zones. Here we go with the military terms, established at the household, neighborhood, camp sector, or community level, depending on the context and setting. They would have minimal contact with family members and other low risk residents. So let's take a look at the table here, how they break this down. We have household level, neighborhood level, and camp sector level. Basically, this is all built around movement of individuals inside and outside of this thing called the green zone. And you can see at the camp sector level, there's going to be one entry point used for food exchanges, a general meeting area where people can have visitors. Kind of sounds like a prison. So let's continue into this document. Brilliant stuff. The further quotes, the shielding approach proposes that green zones be maintained until one of the following circumstances arises. Sufficient hospitalization capacity is established, effective vaccine or therapeutic options become widely available, or the COVID-19 epidemic affecting the population subsides. It goes on.
Just look at that line. I mean, when you hear Fauci saying till the end of 2022 is where he sees some sort of imaginary end to this, though the vaccine doesn't seem like it's going to bring it. Are we talking about the potential that some people could be in these internment camps being protected for their health and safety for, I mean, God knows how long? I mean, it's I think a lot of people are probably shocked right now to know that this is not only being thought about, it's written and on the website at the CDC.
Yeah,
outrageous.
these interim guidelines. Absolutely. These are interim guidelines. So until the COVID-19 epidemic subsides, we're being told by CNN that this is the new normal for the rest of our life. So, and how do they define effective vaccine? A lot of questions there.
Yeah.
But let's go back to this document.
Okay.
There's a couple more quotes that just they need to be out there. Thus, in addition to the risk of stigmatization and feeling of isolation, this shielding approach may have an important physiological impact and may lead to
Right.
yeah, psychological impact, and may lead to significant emotional distress, exacerbate existing mental illness, or contribute to anxiety, depression, helplessness, grief, substance abuse, or thoughts of suicide among those who are separated or have been left behind.
You think?
And finally, yeah, the shielding approach is intended to alleviate stress on the healthcare system and circumvent the negative economic consequences of long-term containment measures and lockdowns by protecting the most vulnerable.
Wow.
So here we go. The economy is essentially ruined because of some myopic decisions by health officials. Is this their solution to fixing it? We'll help the economy by putting these people in a camp?
I mean, and that's what, I mean, I'm concerned when I watch this because I've been saying, and we go along, like the Great Barrington Declaration has been saying, you know, focus protection, protect those that are, you know, over the age of 65 with other comorbidities. But when I've been thinking that, I'm thinking, you know, let them shelter in place, let them stay in their nursing homes, let's make sure that they're really taken care of in the world that they live in. I wasn't thinking you're going to take them and stick them into prison and then hope that the anxiety doesn't take over and the depression. They start killing themselves in the isolation that they're saying could clearly go on for years and years. And you know, this document looked like when I saw it, it's like we're talking the end of July was when this, I think, got posted, which makes you wonder, New Zealand's moving this direction. It looks like Canada's moving this direction. Italy's moving this direction. Obviously, our CDC is considering moving in this direction. What has kept them from doing it so far? And I thought about, you know, when I was looking at this, like Donald Trump, is it possible that they could say to the President of the United States, you know what, sorry, you're in this high-risk group, so we're going to stick you in a camp for your own good, and there it is. We just watched the President of the United States disappear. I wonder if that's why Donald Trump hasn't implemented this, because it might just put him into some prison system in the country. I mean, crazy. It's crazy.
Okay. And where's the conversation at behind closed doors with the CDC as we speak today? Where is this conversation? Are we gonna have a news conference tomorrow and someone's gonna come out and say, hey, guess what? Here's the new implementation we're doing, just like New Zealand did, or just like in Canada.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it makes me want to fire whoever wrote this thing. If it's Redfield or Fauci, I don't care who's president next year. What really makes me concerned is whatever lunatic has come up with this. Clearly, if they are allowed to continue on their plan, this very well, I mean, this is no longer a dystopian novel, right? This is no longer conspiracy theory. These things are sitting on U.S. government websites. Incredible reporting, Jeffrey, and thank you to that viewer out there for sharing. Again, if you have information that, don't ever assume that we're catching everything. We have an international team of scientists and doctors and lawyers that work at putting this show together. But something like this is what makes us special. That when you out there, if you got something you really think should be a part of our attention, go to whistleblower@icandecide.org. And you know, Jeffrey, thank you for bringing that great reporting and continue to do your great work.
If you like that clip, then be sure to check out our live broadcast.